Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and as our Gaelic-speaking friends would say, Fescar Ma, Avrahan Adisabun Mushma. Since I'm here with David, I should also say bonsoir, tous, guten Abend, etc. It's a great honor for me to accept the Canadian Scot of the Year Award on behalf of Alice Munro, who sends her regrets tonight. Alice turns 85 in a few weeks and now lives quietly in Clinton near Goderich and no longer undertakes public appearances and has stopped writing. The end of her writing career is a great tragedy for the world because Alice Munro is such a huge literary figure that she confers a great honor on us by accepting this award, allowing us to boast to the end of time that Alice Munro was once one of our prize winners. Let me try tonight to explain what a huge figure Alice Munro is in the world of literature, and has been for many years, long before she won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2013, the first Canadian winner. In the press, the acclamation in country after country has been so uniquely enthusiastic for so many years that I could spend the rest of this evening, long past midnight, giving you examples. But I won't. Here are just a few. 30 years ago, Newsweek magazine said, "She has quietly emerged as one of our greatest living writers. Alice Munro has an unerring talent for uncovering the extraordinary in the ordinary." And on that same theme, the Montreal Gazette said, "Like an alchemist, she transforms the ordinary into gold." In the New York Times, John Updike said, "Her stories are like few others. One must go back to Tolstoy and Chekhov for comparable largeness." In 2004, Jonathan Franzen, it's significant that the greatest quotes, the most understanding quotes about Alice come from other writers who realize just how difficult what she is doing is. Jonathan Franzen wrote in the New York Times, "Alice Munro has a strong claim to being the best fiction writer now working in North America." And he ends the review with the words, "Read Munro, read Munro." In London, the Times said, "Alice Munro has devoted her career to the short story, and when reading her work, it is difficult to remember why the novel was ever invented." Think about that. Think about the fact that in 2005, the Atlantic magazine said flatly, "Alice Munro is the living writer most likely to be read in 100 years." So we're dealing with a writer who is in the same class as Jane Austen and Charles Dickens and Emily Bronte and so on. She's often been compared with Chekhov and Flaubert, and she will be studied over the years by millions of readers through the years in the future. By 2011, in fact, long before the Nobel Prize and many other major prizes since then, there were well over 400 academic studies of her work in existence. I'm certain that there are well over 1,000 now, and there will be thousands over the years. Her impact on the wider world is so huge that 10 years ago, Time magazine named her as one of the world's 100 most influential people. And if the comparison with Jane Austen has you thinking that she must be writing bloodless little stories about her limited social circle, think of what Margaret Atwood, a great admirer, said about how sex has a huge attraction for many Munro women. In Alice's own words about one such character, she was a woman who shockingly and incomprehensibly gave up everything for love, observers would say wryly, meaning for sex. None of this would happen if it weren't for sex. So in Alice's stories, you'll find amazing scenes of sex threesomes. And there's the astounding scene in the story Differently, where a working mother in a Victoria bookshop is picked up from the shop by a motorbike rider who takes her to a secluded bushes near the shore. When she returns home with a feeble excuse for the babysitter, her hair was wild, her cheeks were flushed, her clothes were full of sand. Take that, Jane Austen. This is the woman who was born Alice Laidlaw in Huron County, Ontario, in Wingham, just east of Goderich, on 10th July 1931. Her father had a failing fox farm, and her mother died young of Parkinson's disease. Alice went on a scholarship to the University of Western Ontario, selling her blood to make ends meet, but had to leave after 2 years. But she started writing in the literary magazine, and she met Jim Monroe. They married, moved west, raised 3 girls, and founded Monroe's Bookstore in Victoria, which lives on. When the marriage broke up, Alice came back to Ontario in 1974 and soon met Jerry Fremlin, an old friend from Western. They moved to Clinton, about 30 kilometers south of Wingham, where Alice still lives, and where Jane and I will visit her on Sunday to present her with the award she's receiving tonight. I'm going to give you a roll call of her books, starting with her first, Dance of the Happy Shades, which won the Governor General's Award in 1968. And as I do this, think hard. Any one of these books would have established a writer's greatness. Lives of Girls and Women, Something I've Been Meaning to Tell You. Then in 1977, I came on the scene, and I've published all the books since then, starting with Who Do You Think You Are? The Moons of Jupiter, The Progress of Love, Friend of My Youth, Open Secrets, Selected Stories, The Love of a Good Woman, Hateship, Friendship, Courtship, Loveship, Marriage, Runaway, The View from Castle Rock, a book starting with the Laidlaw family in Scotland, which began with the words, dedicated to Douglas Gibson, who has sustained me through many travails, and whose enthusiasm for this particular book has even sent him prowling through the graveyard of Ettrick Kirk, probably in the rain. Not true, it's a fine day. Too much happiness, dear life, family furnishings. If any of you think you really know Alice Munro's writing, you're probably wrong. Because unless you've been reading her religiously for the last 30 years, you're in for a big surprise. During that time, she's been changing what the short story can do. And any sentence that begins, every Alice Munro story, is taking a very big risk. One example. Traditionally, a short story is about a precise, concise, specific event, like a dinner party. In Too Much Happiness, by way of contrast, the story follows the life of its subject, who is not a chambermaid in Western Ontario, but a 19th century Russian mathematician, a woman who teaches in a Swedish university. This short story runs to over 70 pages. If you think that all Alice Munro's stories are set in Huron County, think again. Bard and Bus and the Jack Randa Hotel are set on the other side of the world, in Australia. Lots of her stories are set in British Columbia, a few on the prairies. Dulles is set in New Brunswick, on Grand Manan. the Albanian Virgin is set, of course, in Albania. And Hold Me Fast, Don't Let Me Pass is set in Scotland. This is a Scottish-Canadian event, so let's pursue the theme of Alice Munro in Scotland. She's very, very proud of her Laidlaw roots, as the view from Castle Rock demonstrates. I've written elsewhere about how a tourist can find the old Laidlaw farm in the Scottish borders, and how to find the original Laidlaw family graves in the Boston churchyard near Milton, Ontario. But Scotland and Scottish history comes up again and again in her stories. For example, the title story in Friend of My Youth ends by telling us about the Cameronians, a very enthusiastic branch of the Covenanters who, the final paragraph quote is, went into battle singing the 74th and 78th Psalms. They hacked the haughty Bishop of St. Andrews to death on the highway and rode their horses over his body. One of their ministers, in a mood of firm rejoicing at his hanging, excommunicated all the other preachers in the world. True stuff. I once was talking about Alice at an academic conference in Inverness in Scotland, and I mentioned that her book, Who Do You Think You Are?, was given a new title in the UK edition because the London publisher didn't think that UK readers would get the double meaning. The Scottish audience was outraged. They got it, and Huron County, settled by Scots, certainly got it too. The London-based literary critic Carl Miller wrote 10 years ago, "Two of Scotland's most gifted writers of all time are born and bred Canadians, Alice Munro and Alistair MacLeod. We honoured Alistair as Scot of the Year a few years ago. When I received the award in 2005, as David has mentioned, both Alistair and Alice came to the ceremony at Castlelona and spoke very movingly. They knew how important this award is. Now, I'm very glad that we have completed the circle by honouring Alice Munro tonight."